every week I didn't get to my outcome was going to hold me back at least another month from getting from my ultimate outcome. So I just wasn't going to let it happen. But in the early days, that was always the case. I was the driver of result. I remember when it changed, I hired 3 guys, 2 dudes and a girl, that were just different than everyone else. They weren't showing up for me, they were showing up to beat me. They didn't need me. In fact, they were more like pushing the other direction, which made it really fun for me. And that's honestly when the business started to get fun. I was like, okay, this business is a hell of a lot more fun when you are playing with people who want to win and aren't looking to you for everything, but looking to beat you. Right. And that's ultimately who you want to hire is people that they look at what you do and they think, if this fucker can do it, I can crush at this. That's your guy. There's certain things that change easily. There are other things that don't. I'm just being honest with you. Character does not change quickly. Mentality can be improved, especially if you infuse it with experience. Skills have the highest leverage. So if you're working backwards then, what are you solving for in the interview? Well, if character is the hardest to change, then what are you looking for? Character. Skills is the last thing I care about, which isn't me saying I don't care about skills. I do, it's just the last thing I care about, not the first. So when we're interviewing, there's 2 things and they both matter to me. I'm looking for people who are a competency fit and I'm looking for somebody that's a cultural fit. And I gotta have both. That's why pairings matter. It needs to be a culture they wanna be part of. I'm not trying to convince somebody that isn't gonna be in our culture. By the way, that is why we invite them back for a second and they hang out during morning meeting, they hang out in our environment because you can tell more often than not by how somebody responds to being in that environment. Are they animated? Are they energized? They're like, dude, that was amazing. Are they indifferent? Or are they like, indifferent or generally I'm not too excited about. I'm looking for the people that are like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is amazing. Character is hard to change. I'm not saying it's impossible to change. It's hard to change. And it takes time because character is generally deeply hardwired on an unconscious level. And so another question that goes back to that, when I'm dealing with clients and they're like, hey, I don't know if I should keep this guy on, what do you think? My question is, if you knew what you knew now, would you still have hired them? Because sometimes we get stuck in this sunk fallacy concept, sunk cost fallacy, and so we stay with someone way longer than we should have. By the way, we do this in personal relationships too. People stay in personal relationships that they probably should have exited a while ago. And it's like, well, if you would have known what you know now about this person, would you have even started dating them? And I'm like, no.
How much can you attribute that to you leading them? If I ask myself that and I say no, I wouldn't have hired them just because they don't have the mindset I want. But how much is that on you?
That's a great question. So when you're a new leader, I would bet that it's 100% on you. It may not be. To be fair, I would perform as if everything depends on you, while understanding honestly, it depends on them. You just want to remove you from the equation. But if it's a brand new leader, like you want to turn me off from giving you an interview, say yes to hiring someone and give up on them by day 3 because you don't think they're a good fit. You're costing me money. Because whether or not you want to work with them, I still have to fucking pay him. So if you're thinking like a business owner, it's like, well, if you said yes to this person, you are now responsible for their training and development. The time to say no is before you hire them. Now, what are the chances that it's you? It could be high depending on your skill level, your experience. However, I will say this, and I'm reminded of it all the time, I have seen amazing people come from shit situations, amazing people come from people that were not necessarily great leaders or examples, and I have seen crappy people, result related, come from great offices and great leaders. Which reminds me that at the end of the day, if somebody wants it bad enough, nothing is going to stop them. The conditions that I needed to succeed were met, but with all due respect to the conditions I started in, it wasn't because it was an optimal situation. I was not terribly impressed by what I saw. My goal, and it didn't always happen, but at least 80% of the time did, but day 3, they were closing on their own. And then it was my new leader that I'm really excited about, hey, I want you to take this guy out and just show him the ropes. You don't need to over-explain things, just go close with him. When I do that, double trouble, I get to learn something about my new guy, and I also get to learn a lot about my leader. How does my leader respond and deal with that? And then very often, unless I had another guy I was training, I would take my leader's guy. Okay. So we'd swap, and that was perfect because then I get to learn more about my new leader. Mm-hmm. How is he or she as a trainer? What does their day 3 look like? I'm like, oh, you didn't cover that. That didn't cover it. Oh, wow, you already know that. Wow. So it helped me coach my entire ecosystem, which means I had a very clean pulse on what my team was doing, what we were good at, and what we weren't good at. So, but I generally wouldn't go with somebody for more than 3 days. And 3 days was tops. When you see people that are really inconsistent, it's because their averages are their standard. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most humans are more animal than we'd like to admit. We do exactly enough to survive.
Is there a way to train that? Is there a way
Yeah, I'm just being very honest. I could give you just like, yeah, here, do this.
Yeah.
What I have found is when people want something bad enough, nothing will stop them. You can figure out ways to hack behavior in people, right? I certainly could give you tools for doing that. The issue is if it never takes, you're gonna have to continually do that. Like you could put them in a condition in which you basically trick them into getting better. And sometimes it will stick, but in other cases, what they're really responding to is your energy and your effort into them, and that's what's motivating them. And as soon as you remove that, they go right back down, because there's no internal mechanism for performance, for excellence. This is why I am only getting more brutally honest with the way I speak, because sugarcoating shit for people is not serving them. The quicker you can be a loving mirror, and I do mean loving, the goal isn't to be an asshole, but the goal is to be clear, to allow for the crack of light, to allow for awareness to open up and go, listen, if this is how you want to show up, let me show you how this is gonna play out for you. And in 10 years of doing this, it's easy for me to go, I've seen this a million times. I've seen how this plays out. So for me, it's like playing, if you've played Texas Hold'em for a long time, you start to unconsciously know the odds of particular hands, right? And you can get much better at it simply because you played the game long enough to know inherently, here's the flop, here's what's in my hand, and you may not even be able to say, although when you get really good, you usually do know the actual percentages, but unconsciously you know the percentages. It's the same thing in sales. When you've sold enough, you know what a sale looks like. And it wasn't woo-woo, it's just you have done it enough that there was unconscious conditions that you were able to pick up on that said, yeah, that's my close. If not that, then you certainly have had it where you've engaged with someone and within a few seconds of engaging with them based on how they're talking, sharing, and qualifying, you're like, this is a sale. It's the same thing with interviewing. When you get really good at it, you just begin to know who's gonna work out and who's not. So I've used this analogy before, but it's a good one. The FBI, when training for counterfeit, their counterfeit department doesn't spend all the time studying all the ways that people are trying to fake money. They spend most of their time touching real money. Because if you know the smell and the feel and the look of real money, it is very easy to tell the difference. It's the same when you're a talent scout. You know what the real shit looks like. And once you know what the real shit looks like, you know when something is not that. Now, for our business management training program, we primarily are hiring people with no experience by design. That really came out of, not COVID, although I wanted to say that came out of the 2008 recession, in which I decided, because at first I was gonna hire people, I figured I could speed this whole thing up by just hiring people with talent. Like hire people that already knew what they were doing. During that time period, I had multiple people come into my office literally crying, looking for work, and they were saying, I will do whatever it takes. And I realized I'd rather take that guy than somebody with talent. And so we hire a lot of entry-level people, which means we got to get really good at developing entry-level people, which means we got to get fantastic at our systems, we got to get fantastic at replicatable language, and we got to get really good at figuring out what's a good starting hand. Not everyone is going to be able to do this well. One of the ways we figure that out is for you guys to get seasoned enough at interviewing that you just start to get good at knowing this is a good hire or not. And part of it is there's an experience part that comes with it, where you just get a spidey sense on people. You're like, this doesn't feel right, or like, hell yes, this feels great.